Okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. We'll just be keeping an eye out for people as they join in. We've got a nice little cozy crowd here in the gallery. So yeah, thank you so much, Mary and Michelle, for being here and opening up your practice and methodologies with us. I'm excited about this artist dialogue series, and so thank you both. And you guys are the first to do a duo, so I'm really looking forward to that dynamic tonight. Um, and then also, I want to thank Avery for being here. Avery is going to be our co-host as well, as one of our lead members. And I'm here representing the 109 Gallery, where we have part of the exhibition on view with the Bodies and Borders, Ecologies of Consent. Um, so thank you all for coming and joining. Those of you that are here, you're welcome to put your land acknowledgements or where you're from in the chat, and we'll be looking out for questions as we get towards the end. We'll leave some space for Q&A. So just a little bit of Zoom housekeeping before we get going. And before I turn it over to Avery to introduce WEAD further and do their land acknowledgement, I just want to thank everyone, and I'm excited about this opportunity to share and discourse together. So just to introduce WEAD briefly, Women Eco Artist Dialogue, founded in the 1996, in the 1900s. No, and it's a volunteer-run cohort of a female identifying visual artists, writers, curators. We have poets and historians, researchers, scientists, and others interested in highlighting this intersection of ecologies, art, and our social political issues, and really have spearheaded some, I think, inspiring projects around art and activism and making real change. So yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Avery to read the WEAD land acknowledgement, and then I'll bounce back and read the one for the gallery here.
Awesome. Hello, guys. So WEAD is in Berkeley, which sits in the territory of Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of a sovereign Verona band of Alameda County near one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona band. We recognize the Muwekma Ohlone tribe who are campaigning to become federally recognized. The Association of Ramaytush Ohlone who are researching, revitalizing, and preserving Ramaytush Ohlone history and culture, and the Confederated Villages of Lisjan and Sigorte Land Trust, who are working to return native land back to indigenous stewardship.
So just a quick introduction for Mary and Michelle. So Mary White is a multidisciplinary artist whose practice explores material and emotional residue and place, memory, and ecological tensions. Also, her work is working across multimedia of sculpture, installation, and
Ah,
using amazing glass techniques as well and collaborations. I'm really inspired by the way that Mary, you work in such diversity of collaboration and material. Um, and then Michelle, just really giving a quick overview for Michele Brody's work, very accomplished interdisciplinary artist as well, bridging the kind of gap between, I would say, architecture, ecological, and social engagement, um, known for her elegant use of living materials, particularly her ongoing work in series with reflection, using tea and community and these exchanges that bring people into spaces and engage in different ways. Um, and I'm excited to see what each of them unpack about their practice and the things that they have been working on, in what is a really prolific and accomplished career. I'm very honored to have both of you guys, ladies, here today. Thank you. I believe, Michelle, you had said you would go first, so
Yeah.
I turn it over to you.
So, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm zooming in from Arizona, and as a land acknowledgement, the tribe that we just border land on is the Yavapai of Yavapai County here in northern Arizona. Um, the piece that I have currently in the show for Bodies and Borders is a work from 2019 titled Borderlines. And this piece is a multi-layered handmade paper work of art that of one of my few pieces that actually get framed. Mm, Most of my work is very mixed media and large scale installation. But I want to speak about borderlines in reference to first, this is the first time that it's been shown outside of New York since 2020 when the piece was up in Philadelphia for this really wild show called FEMA. And it's not the FEMA that you know, curated by Jeff Carpenter. It was called Fear Environmental Management Atrocities. And now that I look back on this title, I mean, it's just gotten worse because this show did go up during the first Trump administration, and now it's up. Now we're in the second. And FEMA is getting just devastated. But the really um, powerful thing about this show is that the entire gallery was flooded, and that to enter, you had to wear rubber boots. So it's a little hard to see because it's white on white, but my friend Olivier there in the image is wearing big white rubber boot, wellies or rubber boots there. I said wellies for Tessa there. And so it was really poignant to be in this space, especially after being in New York during Hurricane Sandy and certainly ongoing flooding that keeps on getting worse and worse around the world, and is very much a proponent behind why so many people are migrating and moving beyond borders, which this theme of this show is so poignant about. The real inspiration for this piece, Borderlines, really developed in 2019 when our president at the time and now was railing off about caravans coming to the border, and that these caravans of immigrants were going to invade our country. And nothing could be wonderful and more opposite of that, but to see this public art piece that was set up where people were seesawing with each other on pink seesaws. And to see that beauty of taking this image of this border wall, which ironically being porous as it is, and that you can see the other side, um, at least there's something open about this border that is still there, and I hope will still be there. Because my mother and I have been watching uh, the Ken Burns new documentary of the American Revolution, and it just brings everything home that we are, unless we're from indigenous tribes, we're not all native to this country. And we are a country. We are a country that was formed by immigrants. Okay, so talking about borders, the work, like I said, has many layers of handmade paper. Um, and that paper is sort of like on the brown part on the top is formed from the stems and leaves from daylilies. And the daylily is the official flower of the Bronx, where I live in New York City. And this is a photograph from the New York Botanical Garden, which I live about 3 blocks from and visit often, and as a member. And here they are as a border themselves that are along the walk that comes up every year. And so I gather my materials and I use my materials are most often seasonal detritus. Now, it's true that Leah first mentioned that my earlier work was using a lot of live plants, and they still are. They're just dried now and pressed. And on the right is an image of um, one of the daylilies, and below it is a watermark of the daylily. And this is what I use to create the border lines of the piece. On the left, I'm not gathering daylilies here, but milkweed plants to make into milkweed paper, which I'll get into with with more of a current project that I'm working on. So just want to show you, this is a time lapse showing the process of creating a watermark. And if for all of you who are printmakers out there or use specialty papers, especially cotton papers for printing and drawing, you know that it's a good piece of paper if it has a watermark, and that's if you show it up to the light and you'll see the logo for the paper maker. And so what I do is I use a screen. It's basically a screen that has a raised surface. So to create this, I used puff paint, and this raised surface forms a slight hill that moves the fibers of the paper while you're forming the sheet. And this is what I use to create the lines that make up the state borders as well as the border between the United States and Mexico in the piece that I have up in the show. And so this is another process called pulp painting, where I use those watermarks as also as a form of a boundary or a border line, really, to paint in the line, so to say. And so that the next step is where we're lifting the screen off of the piece. And this is also silk screening, and then we go back later into painting. So that was just to show you the process behind the image on the right that you see, which is an earlier version of borderlines. And it was interesting looking at the two maps at the top showing the border, the more angular version on the left, which is the actual wall, and of course the one on the right, the river of the Rio Grande as a natural border. But what I found really interesting with the map on the right, these arrows are showing the movement of the migration from Mexico. And of course, at that time, it was a lot of people coming and leaving Venezuela and other countries around the world, often due to climate change. And I used dried daylilies on the bottom right to create that movement. But then a few years later, I started working on this project about the monarch butterfly and its migration routes and how the monarchs know no borders. They, for centuries, have been flying their migration pattern from Mexico to Canada and back over 4 generations for thousands of generations. And so the image of the map that I on the bottom left in handmade paper is where part of my process of using seeds to sprout in the paper, using the paper like it's a growing medium. And how it's really, now that I put the two together, I see that there's a mirror of this migration pattern happening where the monarchs go really east and west. And it's the same thing as where a lot of migration is happening, going up into California, of course, and then going east towards the more central Midwest and the far, and also the East Coast. So the white lines that you see are part of that watermark that's made. And this is just to show you an example of that growing process. Back when I did the show in Philadelphia, I also showed one of these maps. I've been doing maps that are focusing on uh, electoral maps since the beginning of the new millennium. So I've done Barack Obama and then Trump and then Biden. And this map is from 2024. And I planted seeds, wheatgrass seeds, all along the borders of our country, between Canada and Mexico, and also the borders between what we've been terming as red and blue states. And what happened after planting those, if you see the one on the right is from 2024, and where the seeds were planted, the roots only spread into the blue paper, which is made from recycled blue jeans. And the parts which represent the red states, uh, as soon as the roots hit those, they died. Versus with the electoral map from 2020, I laid my seeds down according to interstate highways, and the roots just took off everywhere. And so I use wheatgrass because the central part of the United States is the breadbasket of our country, and it's an attempt to tie our country back together again. So going back to borderlines, like I said, if you look really closely in, and I don't have a close-up, unfortunately, show virtually, but if you're there in the gallery, you can see that there's some slight roots that you can see that of seeds that were planted along those migration routes. And to show you some current work, as that's more community-oriented based, and this goes back to me gathering milkweed along the highways of the Bronx, is that I've been working with community members, mostly in community gardens in Brooklyn and the Bronx, and making paper from that and asking people to write a migration story. So it's not necessarily about immigration, but migration, that notion of people moving, just like the monarchs and how they move across the earth and across this continent of North America. These are people sharing these stories, which are then are folded and suspended as origami butterflies so that their stories are private. Because, for some people, these are very difficult stories to share. The turmoil that families have gone through to try and get to this country. And so you can see that the text is there, but not fully readable. And so it's this private public kind of sharing that I've been very grateful for almost 500 people who have been sharing this over the last few years. that I've been doing this project, Monarch Migrations. And so these are two other installations utilizing that same map that I showed earlier of the migration patterns. So again, I want to really thank you for being a part of the show and being curated in with this piece. And let's hear about WEAD from Mary if she's there. I'm not sure if I think she had to leave the screen because we're still. Oh, there you are, Mary. You're back. I'm going to unshare and we can go forward. If I can find my
I'm
Thank you,
I'm
Michelle.
going to suggest, Leah, because we're still trying to sort this out, that we go ahead and have the audience speak with Michelle and that I not present today.
Are you sure, Mary?
Yes, because we've taken up a lot of time.
yeah.
It'll be fun for the audience who are in the gallery to talk to Michelle, and I'll do this some other time.
Okay. If that's what feels right for you, I support that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing your practice with us. And I think that I want to just say she has but scratched the surface um, with with the work that you do. So encouraging all of you here to deep dive into Michele Brody's work a little bit further because it is expansive. And thank you so much for that. We will take questions, comments, dialogue at this time.
Yes.
And I'm going to remove the pen so we can share. There we go.
Yes.
And I'll be up here in the hot seat if you have any questions or thoughts to bring to Michelle. Thank you.
Yes. You're a lifesaver.
Okay. Introduce yourself if you want so we can see your faces.
Hi.
Hey, Michelle.
Oh,
My name is Caleb Knowles. I wanted to thank you for coming. I found everything you talked about very interesting. I had a quick question though. I might have just misheard you or did not hear you. What was the reason that the weeds did not grow on the red states? Um, was there like a reason, maybe the material you were using, or? And I had one follow-up.
okay. Do you want me to answer that or do you want to ask your
Go
follow-up
ahead.
question? I've been trying to figure out why. Um, One thought was that, I mean, the blue paper is from recycled blue jeans. I did not add any dye or pigment to that. Whereas the red is coming from a pigment that is added to the pulp. But as you can see from the 2020, it's this the plants grew on both the red and the blue. So my thinking is that the bright red that I used, because if you remember when they were showing the electoral maps, they were really highlighting the bright red of the red states versus the darker red of the purple states or the swing states. And I think the bright red was too bright for the roots because roots grow underground. They need the darkness. And that's my feeling was the reason. I don't think it's because of my chemistry of just adding the pigment because it's natural pigment. I'm not using chemicals to make that reaction. So that's my thought, the brightness.
Um, another thing, another thing that I found interesting was when you were talking, or you displayed the photograph of the border wall and the seesaw on each side. Just yeah, just the I guess the human nature of it. Both sides. Kids doing what kids do, regardless of where they're at. Just it's a very uplifting visual. And then I like how you went and started talking about the monarch and the just the I guess I'm trying to think how to say this, but nature doesn't have boundaries, if that kind of makes sense. There's no borders. The freedom of, you know, the butterflies flying, the monarchs, and how I guess metaphorical that is for like humans, like it's a man-made concept, border walls, and something. What a better example is there than what you were talking about with the monarch? So I just wanted to tell you, just I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. In particular, uh, being now more so focused on the imagery of the monarch, um, I have a lot of friends who are of Mexican descent, and I see in a lot of the imagery that they're sharing is that it's the migrant with the butterfly wings
Yes.
and don't want us to be hindered by those borders. So it's a
Yes.
very strong image, especially doing Dia de los Muertos, because that's when the monarchs return to Mexico, is at the end of October, early November. And I think that was part of the inspiration for Dia de los Muertos. Um, or as one woman called it, the orange plague, like this notion of being taken over by the monarchs when they are migrating in. It's just an amazing experience to be in the middle of that swarm. And they swarm together and they're a people, they're a community.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you so much for letting me talk to you. Once again, it was great hearing everything.
Thank you for listening. So I don't know if there's anyone online who had a question or anyone else there at the gallery.
Deanna online has a question if you want me to read it.
Okay.
Okay. She says, I miss most of Michelle, unfortunately, but I wonder, where are your personal roots? Are they Midwest or Borderlands? And how does that affect your artistic choices?
Okay. I'm originally from New York. My family immigrated to this country from Eastern Europe back in the late 1800s. So my family's been here for, I guess, four generations. Um, but I come from a family of builders. So my great grandfather started building public structures and homes in Brooklyn and Queens, and then my grandfather continued, and my father, and now my brother is building homes in Denver, Colorado. Um, but I sort of took the route of building as an artist in the installations that I do. And so that's really the foundation physically and also emotionally and artistically where I come from is that building of space and placemaking and sharing those spaces with others. Okay.
I think that was an amazing question also. Um, I do have a question, Michelle, for you. I've been kind of waiting to deep dive this a little bit with you, but I'm really curious how you got into the very public-facing tea exchange project and practice that is part of your body of work as well. I don't, we didn't go into that so much tonight, but
Mhm.
I really love that piece and that project. So if anything you could unpack for me about.
Yeah, you sure. I mean, I noticed that you had that piece, those works up in the social media. I've actually continued that through the monarch migrations because the tea sharing um, is about creating a space for two people, three, as well as a group to meet and be present for one another. That's the essence of tea, where you as a host welcome a guest and that you are there for one another at that moment, at that time. It's ikio. No, I'm not going to say the Japanese, but it's a Japanese practice of one time we are here. And so I've collected hundreds and hundreds of these stories written onto stained tea bags, but now I've moved into that same idea of collecting people's writings, but onto the milkweed paper that become the butterflies. And really, it comes from a love, originally it comes from a love of tea and the love of the color of the tea. And how tea is it is the second most imbibed beverage across the world next to water. It's not coffee, it's not alcohol, it's tea. And so there's a tea practice for almost every culture. And it's a beautiful connector. And, in line with the show Bodies and Borders, I was almost going to bring in some inspirations that are behind this, and then in particular, a book called The Places in Between, written about a man's journey across Afghanistan after the United States had invaded. And how no matter where, and it's also in the book, 3 Cups of Tea, it's like no matter where you are, even if you're a stranger, you will be welcomed into someone's home with tea. And that's just the beauty for me.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing more about that. I pulled up a few images for our in-gallery guest.
Oh,
I
good.
had to so they can see how very communal and intimate, but yet expansive at the same time that project is. So thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else here have questions, thoughts, comments? Let me check our chat.
Oh, okay. Somebody,
Yeah.
Avery put up a link
Oh, wonderful.
in the chat. Okay.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. We may have a question or two, maybe, and then anyone else that has tuned in. Thank you so much.
Hey, how are you? I'm Tom,
Hi, Tom.
and I actually had to step out and fix a toilet, so I missed a little bit of your presentation. I apologize. But as I think about the subject you discussed, a lot of things are going through my mind. I am a biologist, and the monarchs are really fascinating, right? They've got the summer generations that only live weeks, but then they've got the end of the summer, the generation that migrates, that can live up to like 9 months. And they're the ones that make the big trek. And you think about the division between us and at the border there to the south, they can get over it, but a lot of the other animals can't. I mean, the whole point of it is to keep people from crossing, but it keeps turtles from crossing and roadrunners and all these other animals that live in that part of the world. And so as I looked at your art and I listened to the part of your presentation I was able to hear, it got me to thinking, and I'm not sure I have a question so much as just a comment that um, while the barriers are there for some, they're not there for all, right? The monarchs can fly over, but a lot of the other animals can't. And the very thing that the border, the boundary is intended for, fight to get through it. And I don't know what all that means, but when I think about that whole thing, it's fascinating to me. And I didn't know if my rambling of comments had maybe anything you might want to comment on. But I just think it's an interesting dynamic, the difference when you look at the different species and how it impacts.
Yeah, a comment that I'll bring in on that, Tom, is another aspect of my work is going into a deep dive into what's native and non-native, or what we call invasive species, uh, and how certain species get across the world. Certainly, there's the natural aspect of birds who are flying over and they poop and they eat in different lands and then those land. And so some seeds end up growing, maybe not where they started. And of course, there's wind that carries and pollinators that carry seeds. I mean, that's the whole notion of how we're able to eat. But then something like a plant that I've done a lot of work with also is Phragmites, that those seeds came to this country early on with the colonists and trade in the bilge of ships that also bringing tea from China. So it's it's many different ways, and in particular with the monarchs, I've been the plant that seems to be affecting a lot of the milkweed from growing in at least the wild parts here in New York is mugwort.
Mm.
And it's interesting how mugwort and also Phragmites are very revered in their native countries, um, as maintaining biodiversity and their local species. But when mugwort is here, it grows as a monoculture and prevents that biodiversity from flourishing. And so what I try to do is I actually also mix mugwort into the milkweed paper to find a balance. It's all about creating a balance between all those species. And I know that in certain wild areas where there's roads growing through, they have built bridges for migration over those roads. Maybe we can somehow convince them to do that over the fence, even though the fence is open, larger creatures can't get through, of course.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So,
it's everything is so interconnected, and I don't think we as a species understand the impact we have when we move something around,
oh,
right? I mean, we're impacting an entire ecosystem, and you start thinking about the microcosm of the ecosystem, right? That little part down by the creek where it's shaded and the water's shallow and everything's a little different than the rest of the creek. Different things live there than that, and so everything we do has an impact. So anyway, I find your piece very interesting. Thank you.
thank you.
Like your role in biology, because I think it makes
So
a lot of importance.
I am a biologist, and I've been most recently been at the Tennessee Aquarium for 28 years, and I'm the vice president of husbandry and exhibits. So I've worked with animals for about 40 years of my life, and that's what I do. Um, I was really interested in plants till I took plant morph in college, and I realized as much as I love them, they didn't click with me. It was harder for me. So I went the way of animals rather than plants.
Okay. We'll forgive you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we close it out? Thank you so much, Michele, for your time. And
Mhm.
I'm going to check and see real quick if we have anyone in the chat that has any questions. Oh, yeah.
Or if Mary, you want to kind of like,
No, I'm very impressed by your work, Michele, and I'm very sorry for all of these disturbances. And we'll be able to, for those of you who are only able to see part of it, we'll have this we'll fix up the recording. Did the last part get recorded, by the way?
Yes, we recorded the
Okay,
part.
then good work, ladies, Leah and Avery. So We'll have it on the website as a recording. So my humble apologies to all of you for the inconvenience, and we'll have to sort it out.